When I told my own son that I was going to be in a superhero movie, he asked me what it was. I said I would be playing Ant-Man. And he said, what? He was not that impressed. What he actually said was, well, I can't wait to see how stupid that'll be.
Ant-Man is a strange film in the context of the MCU. This is largely due to the fact that it is the last film of Phase 2. These phases in the grand scheme of things don't really matter, like general audiences don't have to think about these things. It's just a fun little way that Marvel likes to sort of chapter their movies. It's kind of like seasons of a TV show. But in this case, with Ant-Man being the finale of Marvel's second season, it's a really, really strange finale. Especially since this comes out after Age of Ultron, which sort of wrapped some things up for Phase 2. So having this be the finale, it's sort of like, let's compare it to The Last of Us. What if their finale wasn't Joel saving Ellie from the hospital? What if there was another episode after that? An episode focused entirely on this family. It would feel weird. Like the season is over. Go home. That's the feeling this film gave off as a finale to Phase 2 for the hardcore MCU fans. But as a movie, however, it's a pretty enjoyable comedy. Sure, it's got a forgettable villain, but that's honestly a criticism you can lobby at like half of these movies. But man, Paul Rudd as Scott Lang is just so damn likable. It's got some really great jokes and some really fun editing choices that doesn't fit at all with the MCU style, which of course makes them all the more better. I was really surprised with how much I liked this film when it first came out. Do I think it's top tier MCU? No, but it's still a pretty fun time. But how many kills can we find in Ant-Man's first solo feature? Well, let's get into the film itself and find out. The film opens in 1989. We are shown an early version of S.H.I.E.L.D. and meet one of their earliest members, Hank Pym, a scientist who developed a new shrinking technology. And he's pissed. He doesn't want people to replicate his shrinking serum, but the people at S.H.I.E.L.D., including Howard Stark, have something else in mind. This guy, Mitchell Carson, takes things just a bit too far.
If only you'd protected Janet with such ferocity, Dr. Pym.
Stark tries his best to reason with the scientist, but Pym remarks that as long as he's alive, nobody will ever get his formula. We then cut to present day and meet Scott Lang, played by Mr. Paul Rudd. He's in the middle of a pretty intense prison fight. Or it seems like one, at least.
I miss you, Scott.
I miss you too, Peachy.
Man, you guys got the weirdest goodbye rituals.
He's actually being released, and his buddy Luis decides to go pick him up. On the road, he decides to catch him up on everything he's missed while he was away.
Hey, how's your girl, man?
She left me.
Oh.
Yeah, my mom died too. And my dad got deported. But I got the van.
It's nice.
Luis has his mind set on getting his friend back into thieving, but Lang wants to leave that life behind. So instead, he turns to hell on earth.
Welcome to Baskin Robbins. Would you like to try our mango fruit blast?
The filmmakers always wanted to cut from Scott in prison to him working in some menial customer service job, but it wasn't always going to be Baskin Robbins. He was originally going to be working at Chipotle, but they refused because of the negative way they'd be featured in the film. They then pivoted briefly to Jamba Juice before finally settling on Baskin Robbins when they realized that the bright colors would act as a funny contrast to the dark prison opening. After Lang has had it with Bo, he's called into the manager's office, who reveals that he's found out about Lang's past. While he is impressed by his past life, he does have to let him go. Lang returns to his apartment where Luis introduces him to his friends Kurt and Dave. Luis again tries to get Lang to join them on another heist, but he assures his friend that he is done. Meanwhile, Dr. Pym returns to Pym Technologies, which is a facility he must have started after leaving S.H.I.E.L.D. The film does not make this clear. This enterprise is being run by his daughter Hope and his protege Darren Cross. Cross reveals that he knows about Pym's shrinking particles and hopes to use it as a weapon. He also introduces his own shrinking suit called the Yellowjacket that comes attached with guns and a bunch of other just scary tech. Might as well throw the fucking anti-god on there. One investor, Frank, isn't thrilled about the whole thing and worries about what will happen when their enemies get a hold of their tech. Pym shares his concerns and angrily advises that Cross doesn't continue. Knowing that it's a fruitless endeavor to change his mind, Hank and Hope know that they need to find a way to destroy the suit, and they might know a guy perfect for the job. Scott Lang shows up unannounced and uninvited to his daughter's birthday party. Here we learn that his ex-wife is now engaged to Jim Paxton, a police officer that Lang doesn't like very much because he's a criminal and he's a cop. That's the depth of the conflict. We also meet his ex-wife Maggie, played by Judy Greer, who tells him that he can't visit their daughter because he isn't paying child support, which I imagine would be really difficult to do in prison. I don't know. I've never been arrested or have a child, so I can't speak to that. She encourages him to pay, and then they can discuss visitation. Back at Pym's, Cross traps Frank in the bathroom and begins to threaten him before blasting him with a gun that turns him into jelly. This is the current state of his shrinking technology. Clearly, it's not working. He also literally washes his hands of him. You know, that's cold. I like that. Lang, returning home feeling hopeless, asks to learn about the job Luis wants him for. This kicks off the best sequence in the whole film. It's here that we learn that there's an old man with a safe and he's gone for a week. But Luis tells it much better than I ever could.
Of course, I asked him, did Emily tell Carlos to tell you to get to me what kind of safe it was? And he says, nah, dog. All she said is that it's like super legit and whatever's in it, it's gotta be good.
What?
The group then get to work planning things out and getting everything ready for their big heist. We are then thrust into the heist, which seems to be going off without a hitch, without a problem to be had. That is, until he finds the safe, which is made apparently out of the same steel as the Titanic. Luckily though, it's not a super big problem for Lang, as he's pretty knowledgeable in science and metal. And he finds a way to blast his way in. Inside, all Lang finds is a suit. Just a motorcycle suit. Unbeknownst to him, however, he is being watched. Back at his apartment, Lang tries on the suit and finds 2 buttons on the handles. He clicks them and it causes him to immediately shrink down to the size of an ant. The voice of Hank Pym also begins to enter Lang's head as he gives him a slight rundown of how the suit works. Lang is also sent down multiple floors of his apartment complex that send him in a bunch of wacky situations, like putting him in a house party or having him encounter a rat. Pym tells Lang to keep the suit, but Lang is so traumatized he immediately goes back to Pym's place and returns the suit, only to find cops waiting for him outside.
No, I didn't steal anything. I was returning something I stole.
Pym poses as a lawyer and meets Scott in jail. He reveals that he set up the whole thing and wanted Lang to steal the suit. He also sneaks the suit into prison for Lang to help him escape. Lang puts it on, shrinks down, and hops on a flying ant to escape, but the whole ordeal is a little much for him and he ends up passing out midway through. He then awakens in Pym's house and is greeted by Hope, who was seemingly watching him sleep. She doesn't trust him since he robbed the place the last time he was here. Hank, however, couldn't be more delighted to be in the presence of Lang. He's particularly impressed with how Lang broke into their super secure safe. Lang is obviously panicking about all of this, but Hank tries to calm him down. Hank reveals to Lang that Cross voted him out of his own company and warns that the shrinking tech can alter someone's brain chemistry. With Cross already being volatile, he worries about what this would mean if he continues to use this tech. Pym promises that if Lang helps him, he can help him see his daughter again.
My days of breaking into places and stealing shit are done. What do you want me to do?
I want you to break into a place and steal some shit.
Meanwhile, Cross has finally perfected the shrinking technology, meaning Team Pym has less time to destroy the Yellowjacket project. This results in Lang saying what we're all thinking.
I think our first move should be calling the Avengers.
Pym disregards this as he has worked hard to keep the Pym particle out of Stark's hands and doesn't want to hand it to him now. Hope informs the group about Cross's recent development and demands to be the one wearing the suit, which Hank immediately shuts down. Hank then recounts how she's grown resentful towards him after the loss of her mother. Hank encourages Lang to think about saving his daughter and reminds him that he's doing this for her. Thus, we get a training montage full of whips and quick cuts. We also learn that the suit's regulator is not to be messed with, otherwise, Lang will end up in the quantum realm, where he will be forced to shrink until the end of time. Back to the montage, Scott begins to bond with the ants and they begin to plan out their heist. Scott and Hope also have a talk and Lang explains that the reason he's doing this isn't because he trusts him more than her. it's that he's expendable, and Hank doesn't want to lose hope. This sets them down a path of actual friendship. Back in the house, Hank reveals to them that Janet, his wife and Hope's mother, joined him on his missions as the Ant-Man as the Wasp. He recounts their last mission together where they were to stop a missile. Unable to cut through the titanium exterior, Janet shrinks herself down between the molecules by tampering with her regulator and stops the missile. Hank then reveals that he spent the rest of his life trying to understand the quantum realm and bring her back. Hank and Hope finally make up and they forgive each other. The last part of Lang's training is to steal a device from an abandoned Stark Industries lab. Only it turns out to not be an abandoned lab, it's the goddamn Avengers headquarters. It just so happens that Falcon is there at the base. Scott tries to convince Sam to let him inside, but of course that's not gonna happen. The two then get into a fight that's actually pretty fun and showcases how Scott can hold his own. Ultimately, Scott manages to deactivate Falcon's suit before fleeing the scene. Back at Pym's house, Hank berates Scott for being reckless before he reveals that he did manage to steal the tech after all. In the next room, Cross is revealed to have snuck into their residence, and he informs Hank of the success of his Yellowjacket suit. He also invites him to the unveiling, but before Cross can leave, he wants to know why Pym chose him as his protege.
I saw myself.
Why did you push me away?
Because I saw too much of myself.
Cross then calls Hope and tells him he's ramping up security, leaving the water main the only way Scott can get into the building. But in order to set up their heist, they need to expand their team.
Oh, no, not those 3 wombats. No way.
Thank you for the coffee, ma'am.
So the group works out their new plan and successfully manages to get Scott into the building. Cross is also beginning to unveil the Yellowjacket suit, where it's revealed that he's selling the suit to Hydra. Yeah, we're gonna give the suit to Nazis. He also begins to taunt Hank, which causes him to swing once more. Scott manages to drop down the tube and nearly retrieves the suit, but he is instead captured and trapped in the Yellowjacket case thingy. I don't know exactly what it is. Cross then reveals he's learned about the Ant-Man suit and knows who Scott Lang is. He also reveals that not only is he selling Yellowjacket, he's also selling Ant-Man. This leads to a big old-fashioned Mexican standoff that's interrupted when Scott breaks free from his trap using some growy, shrinky tech. He also manages to knock out almost everyone in the room, but not before Hank is shot by Cross. Cross then flees the scene with the Yellowjacket suit, and this other guy flees with some particles. Scott is sent to go after Cross and grab the suit, while Hope stays back and helps Hank. It's kind of surprising that nobody dies in this entire sequence, not even Hank. The mother and daughter then break out of the building using a tank that they grow to the size of an actual tank, using the growy tech that Scott uses. I don't know why I'm stuttering through this, but that's what they did. That's what they do. Surprisingly, this moment of the tank plowing through Pym Technologies was actually done somewhat practically.
We decided we would do it as a full-size element. We built a wall that replicates the side of the building. We built basically a steel shape that's the same size as the tank. It weighs about 3 tons. We put it on the track back behind the wall and we shot it through the wall at 25 miles an hour. You look at how dirty and how messy and how great it looked with all that debris, all that stuff flying through the air and the stuff breaking. I mean, it's hard probably to model that computer. It's just, you get so much value out of something like this on set. It just looks different.
Cross begins to leave in a helicopter, but that is intercepted by Lang and an army of flying ants. As the helicopter lifts off, Cross watches as the entire Pym Laboratories building implodes in on itself, revealing that this entire operation wasn't just a heist to steal the suit, but to make sure that nobody could get Pym's technology. Pissed off, Cross dons the Yellowjacket suit and him and Lang get into a big fight. That takes them from the helicopter to some random family's backyard. In the scuffle, however, the other people inside of the helicopter are killed by Cross. Lang manages to incapacitate Cross by knocking him into a bug zapper, but before he can retrieve the suit, Paxton arrives and arrests Lang. On their way to the station, Paxton gets alerted that Cassie is in trouble. Lang and Cross have one final confrontation inside of Cassie's bedroom. That's actually one of the most fun sequences in the film. They really utilized the set in a fun and creative way with all sorts of great little gags. In a last-ditch effort to destroy the suit and realizing it's made out of titanium, the same material used in the missile that cost Janet her life, Scott makes the decision to shrink down between the molecules to dismantle it. This causes Yellowjacket to shrink into itself, and he ultimately shrinks into an infinite nothingness. Initially accepting his fate, Scott's mind changes after he hears Cassie's voice calling out to him. Lang takes one of the growing thingies and places it in the irrigator, allowing him to grow back to full size, showing it's possible to return from the quantum realm. Scott then discreetly flees the scene. Back at Pim's house, Hank desperately wants to know how Scott escaped, but he can't remember what happened in the quantum realm. But this still gives Hank hope that Janet could still be alive. Also, he walks in on this. Is it rushed? Maybe. But it's classic action movie stuff, so who cares? Also, Paxton and Scott seemingly make up. Paxton reveals that he's cleared Lang of all of his charges after witnessing his heroism in saving Cassie. Everyone then has a nice family dinner that is quickly interrupted when Scott gets a call. He meets up with Luis, who goes on yet another great tangent that reveals that Sam Wilson, or should I say the Avengers, are interested in recruiting him. God damn, that score is just so good. Ant-Man has one of my favorite themes in the entire MCU. It's up there with Captain America's theme for me. It's just so grand and epic. In the first post-credit scene, Hank shows Hope a new and improved version of the Wasp suit, to which she replies,
"It's about damn time."
The next post-credit scene takes place a full year later. We see Sam Wilson and Steve Rogers, who have somehow trapped Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier. The duo are worried about being on their own and unable to get the help of Stark because of something called the Accords. Wilson, however, suggests that they aren't alone and that he knows a guy. So what if I told you this film wasn't always going to be like this? In fact, it could have been even better. One full of visual flair and style. One that had a very distinct vibe from the rest of the MCU. One that could have been made by one of the greatest filmmakers working today. This is the story of the greatest MCU movie that was never made. For reasons that will become clear, the filming location needed to be changed, as to not give away the whereabouts of my location. You have no idea where I am. And that is for the better of you, me, and most importantly, myself. In my hands are classified documents. Classified documents of the original Ant-Man story treatment that have never been released to the public before. They have, in fact, never been talked about by any other YouTuber. It's so hidden. I stole this from a Chinese man outside a Starbucks. So, obviously, Kevin Feige would be hunting for me, the bald-headed baseball cap-wearing freak that he is. Oh, there's someone watching me. What is he doing? What is he up to? So today we will be going over the troubled history, the troubled untold story of Edgar Wright's Ant-Man. What if Edgar Wright, famous filmmaker behind Baby Driver, Hot Fuzz, Shaun of the Dead, Scott Pilgrim, what if he was the one to direct Ant-Man? Well, he almost was. And he actually started developing his idea for an Ant-Man film way before the MCU had even started. So let's dive in and see what could have been Edgar Wright's Ant-Man. Asterisk, inspired by Bullets and Blockbuster, even though he already made this video. So for those of you guys who are unaware, Edgar Wright is an English filmmaker best known for his films Shaun of the Dead, Scott Pilgrim, Baby Driver, Hot Fuzz, fucking Last Night in Soho, if anyone cares about that one. All are pretty much bangers, right? His films are very flashy, very stylistic, and these are things that would be perfect for a comic book film like we saw with Scott Pilgrim. So Edgar Wright and Joe Cornish wrote a treatment for an Ant-Man film back... Sorry, the military is launching jets right now. So Edgar Wright and Joe Cornish wrote a treatment for an Ant-Man film back in 2003 when the rights were still owned by Artisan Entertainment. But this treatment ultimately never got sent to Marvel. The story would have revolved entirely around Scott Lang and his life as a burglar, but Artisan wanted to do more of a quote-unquote family thing. Whatever that means. So it would be fate that Edgar Wright would run into Kevin Feige and Avi Arad right as Marvel Studios was starting up. And Feige, being a fan of Wright's work, was like, hey, we want you to make something for us. You think you'd be great at it? And Edgar Wright was like, hey, I actually wrote something for you guys. You guys never read it, you fucks. No, he didn't say that. He didn't say that. So the two finally read Wright's treatment, and they must have loved it because it was announced as one of their flagship initial titles alongside Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor. Wright even appeared at a 2006 San Diego Comic-Con alongside Jon Favreau to tease the Ant-Man film. The script would have revolved around both Hank Pym and Scott Lang, both, passing the torch, Ant-Man, that whole thing. Sort of similar to what we got in the final product. Wright would finish a first draft of the script in 2008, but despite being one of the initial titles announced for their new cinematic universe, the film wasn't a huge priority for them. Most likely due to the fact that Ant-Man is not very popular, as we heard with Paul Rudd's son saying he's stupid or whatever. So it wouldn't be until 2012, a whole 4 years later, that the film would enter pre-production. And by June of that year, Wright would film a test reel for the film that would showcase Ant-Man's shrinking powers and how he wanted to capture that. This would be shown at a 2012 San Diego Comic-Con, and I'll play a little, I'll play a bootleg version of it here. Unfortunately, this would be the only thing that Wright would shoot for the film because Wright wanted it to be a standalone movie, but Marvel had other plans. Marvel wanted connections to the other MCU films and wanted the film to feel quote-unquote less Edgar Wright, which, why even bother getting Edgar Wright if you don't want his style? That doesn't make any sense to me. So after multiple drafts and rewrites, Marvel would later commission an in-house rewrite without Wright's input. When the script came back completely lacking Wright's voice, that was when he ultimately decided to step away from the project. And honestly, I can't blame him. He's got a very clear, distinct style. He's been wanting to make this film since 2003. So to have that pretty much completely ripped away from him and sort of turned into a director for hire, I don't blame him at all for stepping away from it. I completely get it. Multiple filmmakers, including Joss Whedon, who was working on Age of Ultron at the time, have later expressed their disappointment with Wright leaving the project. Paul Rudd, who had been cast as Ant-Man while Wright was still the director, made sure to keep some of Wright's visual style in the film. One can only assume that Pena's character and the way he tells his long-winded stories is directly influenced by Wright's films, and they also happen to be the best part of the movie. Luckily for Wright, however, leaving Ant-Man allowed him to work on a passion project called Baby Driver, which is a film he actually finished writing before working on Ant-Man at all. While I do like the film we got, it does hurt a little bit to imagine what Wright's version of the movie would have been like. He would have added a stylistic flair to the MCU that we haven't seen before and probably wouldn't have seen since, and it would have given the film its own unique identity within the MCU beyond it just being, the funny one. I do think that losing Wright as the director of this film was a brief wake-up call for Marvel. The jump in quality and confidence in their filmmakers really shows in Phase 3 of the MCU when compared to Phase 1 and 2. Maybe losing Wright as a director set them down a path to try and make sure something like this doesn't happen again. And it allowed them to make really great films like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, which seems to be completely James Gunn, and is all the better for it, might I add. But this still remains the best superhero film we never got. And now, I must go back into hiding so that the cops don't kill me. He has already sent jets. He has sent jets to my location. I can hear them. They are rumbling my car. So I have like 5 seconds to talk. Please subscribe to the channel. Don't leave me. Don't leave me. No. In total, we counted 5 people who died in this film, all of which being men. That's 2 films in a row. I want you to keep track of how many films where only men die, because it might be a lot of them. With a runtime of 118 minutes, that leaves us with a kill on average of every 23.6 minutes, which is fucking crazy. This might be the lowest one for a little bit. I'll give the completed gauntlet award to Frank, who got melted into goo. And goo deaths are always memorable. Never let anyone else tell you otherwise. And I guess I'll give the broken Ultron bot award to the other guys that get shot on the plane. Seeing as how I didn't even remember them when I was making jokes about this film in the last kill count. I guess they get the honorary bad death award. You guys are not memorable. No one remembers that you died. I forgot you were even here. And that's it. Ant-Man was a decent success for Marvel. It wasn't anything crazy, but it made some money. And yeah, that's about it for Ant-Man. Next time on this show, we will be looking at Captain America Civil War, which is a great movie, but that's gonna be a while away. So stay tuned for that. But until then, I just want to say thank you guys so much for watching this kill count. This was a pretty fucking crazy one, to put it lightly. I wanted it to feel slightly different from all the other ones. Again, shout outs to Bullets and Blockbuster and Dead Meat, both of which I've ripped their style for this video. Yeah, so go check out both of their channels. They're both great. They have no affiliation with each other. I have no affiliation with either of them. I just think they're both incredible content creators. I love their work. I also want to give a shout out to my sister for helping count the kills in this video. When these videos would not be possible without her. So again, a huge thank you to her. But yeah, that's gonna do it for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Long live cinema.